And all right. Well, if anyone's watching, we're live now. So, well, Rob, thanks so much for coming on the show today. I'm excited to kick off the podcast with you here. And uh, based off of like what I've researched about you, I know you've been in the WordPress press space for a long time. You run your own agency for a while, and you're also a big podcasting person yourself. So I'd love to kind of start by getting your story about the moment that you kind of decided that you needed or wanted to start an agency and what that looked
Oh,
like.
first of all, thanks for having me, David. I really appreciate it. I was working in healthcare, and so I'm a bit of a different marketing guru from the average person. Most marketers are not technical. I am very, very, very technical on the technical side. So I I was working in healthcare, and I actually started building websites on the site, and that was probably about 17 years ago, give or take. And then what happened was I went from there, and one day the director called me in and decided to say, we're making a direction change with what we're doing in support services in IT, and we no longer need you. And that was, that will be 16 years ago in March 25th to be exact. And at the time, my dad was fighting pancreatic cancer, and we know where that goes. Pancreatic cancer is nasty and nasty, so it took some time up. And then I dived into doing websites for a living. And then from there, I decided a website is only part of the marketing equation. You need to find a way to market them. And I started an agency, and that's kind of where we're at.
Cool. So time goes on. As far as the um, how you built your agency, I mean, I think you've worked with a number of amazing brands. Can you talk a little bit about um, kind of who the people are you're targeting, and then how you've managed to acquire different brands that you've worked with over the years?
So I'll start with the second question first. Targeting. I work with a couple Fortune 500s. It's hard to give the names just because of NDAs, and I'm sure your listeners will appreciate confidentiality, so I can't always go there. But I'll
Yeah, for
share
sure.
with you. I'll share with you a story in a minute. And most of my brands are small to medium to large size businesses, local, some international. They're kind of all over the place. The pros are working on the internet. The story I wanted to share was I had a large known brand in the travel space, their hotel chain. I won't say which one. And many, many years ago, I wrote them an email because I went through a bad experience planning a wedding and booking hotel properties with my ex-wife in Niagara Falls. And I wrote them an email, and I sent them a 25-page document saying all the things that they are doing wrong in their social media marketing. They hired me, to say the least, as a consultant to keep their marketing partner as a honest. And I'm still working with that brand today, actually. So, yeah,
That's pretty
sometimes you got
amazing.
to take a risk. Yeah.
Yeah. Would you advocate for that approach, or have you taken other approaches to get other clients since then?
I've taken other approaches. What I'll tell you is I'm very much a black and white guy. So if I feel something, I've had battles with brands on X very diplomatically. I think as a marketer, you can call and ask for help. And if they don't give you help, then it's free game. So I'll make that clear. But I wouldn't always say that's the best approach. It depends on your personality, really. So.
That makes sense. Well, so well, I guess one thing I wanted to do too is before we got too far is just for listeners who are they're in their agency journey as well, and they're trying to figure out, you know, just compare their agency to your agency. Can you tell a little bit more about kind of the scale of your agency?
Yep.
Yeah.
So revenue standpoint, we're in the seven figures. So I'm up there. I'll say that very, very kindly. Um, I do things differently. So I don't have staff except for a full-time VA. I do, in terms of agency, I'll go to contractors to build if I need to. In terms of what we provide, so the key things is we do some WordPress design, but not as much anymore. A lot of WordPress security. We manage probably over 450 websites from a security perspective. And I'll give you a hint, stay tuned for the offer at the end of the podcast because it will tie into that.
Perfect.
We do a lot of email marketing. So email right now, the big issue is with all the Google and Yahoo changes and DMARC changes and validation changes. It's a little crazy there right now. Do some pay-per-click. And then we kind of go from there. So
Cool. Now I know you focus on WordPress security, but has it
I
always
do.
been that way, or has that been something where it emerged over time as like this is really an area that this is kind of the niche that I want to own?
Yeah. So when I worked in healthcare, I always had a security background and a security interest. You can thank the legendary hacker Kevin Mitnick for a lot of that interest. If you know who he is, I'm sure, David. And for those who don't know, he passed away last year due to pancreatic cancer, unfortunately. So, and it just kind of grew. It started with the fascination of that, and then it just kind of grew. I always had an interest in security, and I pivoted that way because security is something that a lot of people don't understand. Small businesses don't understand. Agencies don't understand. They're good designers, but they're not good security people.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit more about kind of the problem that around security that a lot of people have? I
Yeah.
mean, obviously there's a market for what you're doing. So, short of a full-on sales pitch, I'd love to learn more about kind of what are what's the need in the market? Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, so there's a couple of needs. The first one is education. We got to keep educating people how to do things the right way and the long way. Keeping websites up to date helps. Keeping plugins up to date helps. Using two-factor authentication helps whenever possible. But believe it or not, when you talk to some of the other experts out there, leaving yourself logged in and having cookies that haven't expired has become a big, big problem. So people leave themselves logged in and then they get caught in things like what we call man-in-the-middle attacks. And then having proper backups and testing those backups and being able to recover properly, that's another issue. So,
Gotcha. So who would you say are like the best fit folks, for your types of services?
everything from a medium business to a large business to a small business. It all depends on what they're looking for. I mean, a lot of big business brands are jumping back in email marketing because they realize texting isn't always the way to go. Pay-per-click services are hard because of all the cookie problems and Facebook problems out there. I'm not a big fan of Facebook marketing. I'll tell you that now. I try to avoid it like the plague.
It's kind of it's the elephant in the room, but I've heard so many people talk about just how frustrating different aspects have been. Where it's like, oh my, I got locked out of my account, and there's nobody at Facebook who can actually get me back in. And it's like you have to know somebody who knows somebody in order to be able to get something unlocked. And it's like you'd think that at the scale they're at, there wouldn't be so many bugs, but there's quite a number of them.
What I'll tell you is, I believe that this industry is based on a lot of relationships. I mean, I'm lucky. I've got relationships at all of the most major WordPress hosts. I've got relationships at both Facebook and Google. So from that standpoint, I'm okay.
Yeah.
I've got relationships with a lot of people in the space and out of the space. So that helps. I think a lot of businesses are based on who you know. I would agree with you.
Well, maybe that's a good way to pivot into. I mean, you have a podcast, and we were just talking beforehand about you're coming up on episode 400, and so I'd love to pick your brain about like what you've maybe what role that has played in your agency and new clients, in relationship building.
Yeah. So I was sharing with you before we went to air, the best dirty little secret about a podcast is it's the master class for the interviewer that he can pick the brain of his guest within reason any way he wants. So from, you think about your listeners learning, I always learn from my guests. So that's the first thing. And it depends on the style. So I do a couple things. I do an interview show, and then I try and do a tip show every week. I generally do 2 podcasts a week with some exceptions. And that works really well. I've met all kinds of people. Some of these people become really dear friends over the years, which is great. Some are products that I use. Some are products that I don't use. Some have given me the option to pivot my agency because I've learned things out of podcasts. And it's just been an amazing journey. I mean, I've interviewed everything from Matthias Ventura, who's the lead Gutenberg lead for Automatic, to people who do journaling and productivity. So I've been kind of all over the business map, and that has been an amazing journey. Now, from a business perspective, it puts eyes on the business. So I've had people come to me and say, hire me based on the fact I'm an expert in it. I can share my expertise on a podcast. So that has been amazing, actually.
That's great. Have you ended up with any clients that have, like, they started out as a guest and then they become a client just because you're on their radar now?
5 or 6 of them over the years. And then I've had other people jump in because they've heard the podcast and say, can we hire you? I had one gentleman recently hire me for 14 coaching sessions because he heard the podcast. So,
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So when you talk about, when you are exploring who to have on your show, how have you approached that? Has it just been kind of wherever your curiosity leads, or do you have a roadmap behind the scenes?
Generally I don't have a roadmap except for next week. I was sharing with you, I'm doing a week of WordPress security. So I targeted some specific people I knew in the space besides myself to come on and talk security. So we're going to do a whole week of that, which will be cool. But generally, it depends on the mood I'm in and what I want to touch. So I've had some really favorite guests. One was Vova Feldman, who's the founder of a company called Freemius. So they're a company that helps you monetize plugins, and they do the monetization side behind and the licensing side. And Vova and I talked mostly about entrepreneurship. We didn't even talk about his company to the last 15 minutes. And I knew it was going to go that way. And it was such an amazing conversation. It was one of those where I wish I could have 4 hours instead of an hour. Conversations like that. The first time I talked to Matthias, I had him and Burga Polyhack on, and we talked about, it was more of a coffee style, like we were having coffee together. And we talked about why I moved away from a page builder to the Gutenberg builder. And we hashed that out for an hour and things like that. And another one that comes to mind is Kristen Wright over at Automatic. She works for the Day One Journal, which is a product I now use. And I have to tell you, I wasn't using the product before I talked to Kristen, and I journal every day. And thank you, Kristen. I'm a convert, and you know it. So, things like that. Yeah.
That's really cool. I like that. Well, I guess one thing I wanted to ask about, related to kind of your the journey of your marketing agency,
Sure.
is like, what activities in that growth journey have been kind of the most high impact or high value, and what are some things that maybe you tried out and explored in order to bring in new business, and they ended up kind of just being things, like a waste of time or a dud?
Yeah. So high value is WordPress security plan retainers. I have over 450 clients on retainer. And I've got a different approach than most people. Most people in that space charge monthly. I don't. I charge yearly, and that's the way it is. And if you don't want to pay me yearly, you're not getting on board. So that's the first thing. Um, low value nonprofits. I'll tell you that now. I made a decision as of January the 7th that I wasn't taking on any more new nonprofits. I have several in the political space in Canada. They're easy, but I find a lot of nonprofits want Rolls Royce results for Pinto prices is the best
Yeah.
way of putting it. I'm not taking on any more nonprofits. And then the other thing I'll tell you is a suck is every time I turn around and I try and give somebody a deal because I think I can give them a break, it usually bites me. So I don't do that anymore.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I forget who I heard this from, but I think a lot of agency owners out there would sympathize with this. But the higher tier clients that they have are
Mhm.
usually like the cool. Where do I send the check?
Yep.
And the lower tier clients that they have are the ones that are constantly saying like trying to pile more work on their plate. So
Yep.
I
And
think there's something.
it's not even sending the check. It's the quickie. Like I was saying to you, I have some nonprofits in the political space. I had invoiced one on Wednesday. Their renewal comes up February the 7th. And in Canada, we have e-transfers. You can transfer money by email. And
Mhm.
it was like, where do you want e-transfer send? I want to send it now. Like
Just boom.
those ones are easy. It's the
Yeah.
ones that you have to fight and pull with all the time. That's the
Yeah.
problem.
And I get it. Like when you're a smaller company, you're probably trying to be as lean as you possibly can. But I think when you're working with some of those really small, lean folks, they're trying to get so much extra work for as little extra cost as
Yep.
possible.
Yep.
So awesome. Well, looking to the future, what would you say excites you the most about the direction that you're heading? And do you have grand plans for where you want to go with it?
Yeah, I would say the economic downturn, we're in a bit of an economic downturn right now, I would think. Usually for me is really good. Excuse me. Um sorry, David. The economics are really good. I think from my perspective, economic downturn mean people have to work to get the word out about their business. So there's a lot of that going on. I think more people are becoming aware that they need to do something about to secure the sites for to protect their brands. So that is on the radar. There's a big trend going on of people switching back to email marketing. I don't think a lot of brands ever moved away, so that's going on. And then interestingly, the independent podcasting space. I've got a couple clients that we're building some podcasts with, and that's fun too. So if you know anything about podcasting, for the big podcast networks, advertising revenue is down big time right now. And I think the independent space has a lot to be enjoyed. I'm headed to PodCamp Toronto in at the end of February. I'll be speaking, so that's fun. And just more of the same, pushing ahead and growing the business, really.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I feel like I've become more and more of a convert to podcasting, especially for agency folks.
Yeah.
We mentioned for the purpose of building relationships, but I also think just from a standpoint of, in my experience, working with an agency there's a little bit of a leap of trust that has to be made by the
Mhm.
audience, and
Yeah.
so they want to know who they're dealing with. Who are they going to be working with, and video is one way to do that. Audio is another great way to do that, and it's something that really can't necessarily be communicated um, just by written words on a blog.
So true.
So I think that's one of the biggest takeaways um, that I've had just with my experience around podcasting. So,
Yeah.
well, I know you mentioned early on that there's something that our viewers should stick around for at the very end, and an offer that you wanted to share. Can you tell folks listening more about that, and then where they can find you and listen to you moving forward?
Sure can. So one of the things I decided to do, because I like to help people, is I put together an offer where I'll do a WordPress security audit of your website. And normally I charge for that about $625 Canadian. And I normally charge for a year of a security care plan. I normally charge about $1,500 Canadian yearly. And I'm prepared to put it all out there for $750 for the year. So you're basically getting over $2,000 in services for $750. And you can book that offer at stunningdigitalmarketing.com/podcast offer is where you find it. So
Awesome. And if they wanted to follow you online, is there a good place for them to do that?
two best places are X, formerly known as Twitter, at Rob Cairns, or you can also find me on LinkedIn. If you do a search for my name, that's the best place, and or my business website, stunningdigitalmarketing.com.
Awesome. Well, Rob, it's been super great having you on here. Thank you so much for being the inaugural guest on this
My pleasure.
stream/podcast. And yeah, looking forward to keeping in touch. And yeah, if you're listening and you are on WordPress, I would definitely give his offer a look.
Yeah. Thanks very
so
much for having me, David. Really appreciate it.
Bye-bye.